Welcome. My name is David Hart. I'm the director of the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions at the University of Maine. Boy, am I glad to see all of you, especially after our incredible winter. Even last week, I was still wondering if we'd ever see another spring. Feeling a little better today, but tomorrow could be different. Raise your hands if you lost power during one of the innumerable bomb cyclones that hit our region since last fall. Yeah, exactly. So supposedly more than 100% were affected. In Winterport, my wife and I lost power for 5 days in late October, nearly 2 months before the start of winter, and in retrospect, we got off easy. Huge trees came down everywhere, including an enormous white pine along the Penobscot River, in which generations of bald eagles have stood sentinel. Even though I couldn't see it clearly, I was nearly sure that their nest in a nearby tree had been destroyed and that they'd never return to that tree. But on Saturday, when I worked my way down through the snow and ice to the river's edge, there across the water in the distance was a small white head. And then the eagle's mate descended from the sky and landed atop a tree just nearby. And I guess that means our fierce winter storms are no match for the enduring spirit of these amazing raptors. I've come to believe that Mainers are an equally resilient species. And today, by the power invested in me, I've decided to make all of us honorary Mainers, even people from away. Your commitment to being here, to doing important work, and to sharing the lessons you're learning, whether in the form of research results, best practices, or plain old-fashioned stories, is a testament to the power of collaboration. So thanks to the Eagles and to all of you for renewing my hope and my determination. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I want to thank all the staff, all the volunteers, the sponsors who make this conference possible, as well as the conference steering committee. So many people here make such a difference. I am especially grateful to Ruth Halsworth and Carol Hamble, my amazing colleagues at the Mitchell Center, for whom, if you remember the old Postal Service expression, neither snow nor rain nor the gloom of bomb cyclones stays them from the swift completion of difficult as well as impossible tasks. So thanks to Carol and Ruth. We're very fortunate to have John Hagan with us today. He's been at Manomet for over 30 years and has served as its president for the last 10. Manomet's an amazing organization doing important work on many sustainability fronts, including climate change, land conservation, and sustainable business practices. They have a wonderful internship program for undergraduates that you'll want to hear about. And I urge you, if you haven't already done it, to look at their great website. It's just full of great ideas and great examples of how to make a difference. Especially for some of the students in the audience, you may be surprised to know that back when researchers like John and I got our academic degrees, in his case in the environmental sciences, including the fields of wildlife management and zoology, the kind of training he and I got was often enough to ensure that our expertise would be sought after and used by decision makers and other stakeholders. But as you may have noticed, and John will discuss, the world is changing, and the role that science is playing and ought to be playing is deeply contested. Fortunately, John has done a lot of thinking about how to address these big challenges and has developed some excellent ideas for overcoming them, so it'll be a great talk. But one last thing, when I said we're all honorary Mainers, I'm definitely including John. But if you listen carefully, you may notice that his accent isn't so much from down east as from down south. But let's welcome him all the same.
you, David. I'm going to have to dredge up my southern accent. I've lost a lot of it over the years. I found people didn't understand what I was saying. But thank you, David. I really appreciate the invitation to be here today. I know you and I have, you could maybe call it an obsession about how science is used in our society. We're both students of that subject, and I'm glad to be here to talk about it today. Also, thank you for the Mitchell Center. I mean, what other state can get a group like this together on an annual basis? We all kind of know each other in Maine, so thank you for that as well. Let's see. I live in Maine, just for the record, and Manomet has an office in Brunswick where I work out of. But we also have our headquarters is in Manomet, Massachusetts. Sorry, it's not my fault. It was there before I. But I was down there last week because I have to go back and forth a lot, and I thought, I probably ought to do a trial run, a dry run of this talk. It would be good for the staff at headquarters to hear what I'm thinking, and it would give me a little practice for today. So I did, and I had a group of 15 or 20 of the staff there, and at the end, one of my senior program leaders said, "Damn, that was the most depressing talk I've ever heard." And oh, by the way, your title is kind of bothersome too. And then I went home, I told my wife, said, my staff kind of had this reaction to my talk. She said, "Listen, mister," when my wife starts with "listen, mister," I start listening, because that's as assertive as she gets. It's her, you will not take these people next week in Augusta down into the depths of your gloom and doom, social psychology. So I had to make some adjustments in what I'm going to say today. So I have made some adjustments, and the first thing I did, oh, by the way, I still have to take you down into the valley of the shadow of death of social psychology, but we're going to come out at the promised land. I promise you. But one of the best thing I can probably do is the best adjustment I made is just put the conclusion up front. And if you want to go to sleep, or if you can't go with me down into this valley, just remember this. This is all you have to remember for today. If you want your science put to use, you need to lead with a relationship and follow later with the science. If you want your science used, lead with the relationship with the people you want to use it, and then follow with the science. It works. So you can go to sleep now if you'd like, or close your eyes, or close your ears, because we're going down into this valley for just a bit. So I'm going to tell you another little story about 4 years ago, Manomet. It was time for us to do a rebranding project. Has anybody ever done a rebranding project? It's just like, no, you don't have to do that. But eventually, we hadn't done a rebranding in, 20 years at Manomet. Our About Us page was the same it was in 1992, and it was just time to fix that, refresh our logo, things like that. So we hired this firm out of New York called Fenton Communications. Fancy works mostly with nonprofits, and we invited them to come and give a presentation at headquarters and just explain to us why we needed branding. And so Jennifer Hahn, which is the lead, she's the lead project lead on this, gave us the 101, the branding 101, and she opened with this statement: "If facts mattered, we wouldn't be here." I said, "Jennifer, you're talking to a room full of scientists. You can't tell us facts don't matter." But she said, "Look, I'm from New York. I'm telling you, facts don't matter." Well, what she was trying to say is that we live in a world that we all know that facts do kind of matter. But the reason you need communications assistance is to get your message told, to get your facts out there. But to say that facts don't matter was very worrisome. I guess I kind of knew it, but I'd never heard it put so bluntly before. Then maybe 3 weeks ago, just to reiterate the point, I was listening to, has anybody ever listened to Shankar Vedantam? The Hidden Brain is a podcast. Yeah, isn't it great? Social psychology kind of stuff. And he was interviewing Dan Kahneman. He's the author of Thinking Fast and Slow, Nobel laureate economist. And I can't read the slide. I'm gonna have to look here. Oh, somewhere in his 40-minute talk, Kahneman said, if you were to design a problem that the mind is not equipped to deal with, it's climate change. It's distant, it's abstract, it's contested, and it's not going to be solved by presenting more evidence. Again, we're scientists. What are we supposed to do with statements like this? Then you might have seen, if you were watching the science news, I think it hit the New York Times as well, but it was an article in the journal Science that said fake news spreads faster than true news, thanks to humans, not bots. So what in the world is going on here where science doesn't seem to matter maybe as much as it used to, and what on earth are we going to do about it? So I have thought probably way too much about this subject over the years, but it's important to me because Manomet's, like many of you, our goal is to get science used to make a measurable difference in the world. So I've always felt like it was my responsibility to really understand how to move science into the decision-making world. And as I've studied and thought about this, one of the things I think this is just my opinion, so you can agree or disagree, but one of the things I think is going on is an erosion of trust in our society. So if you think about it, who are you more likely to believe? If someone has a new piece of information, are you more likely to believe your best friend that you maybe have known for life, or are you more likely to believe someone you meet on the street, maybe of a different political persuasion, or maybe they've got an accent like I do? I mean, you're going to believe the person you know and trust. And so I started thinking about this more and doing a little digging into my own research on this. And I found some data, and this is a measure of interpersonal trust in the U.S. Over the past, 40 years or so. And there is a very linear decline in interpersonal trust over time. And this is troubling because if we want science or facts to be used, we have to trust who's delivering the news or the facts or the science. And this erosion, I don't know what's causing this. I don't really need to know what's causing this. But I think that dealing with this issue of trust, like I said, lead with the relationship based on trust, is a key part of the solution. So I did a little more digging. I looked into, tried to get a little more information. Well, how about how are scientists trusted in society? And we do pretty good, really. This is a trend from 1990 to about 2016, and we're at about 40% of the population trusts scientists. And that probably doesn't seem so good, really, but 40% is pretty high. There's only one occupation or profession that's higher than scientists. Does anybody know what that is?
No, nurses have, we're pretty high up there.
Are you a nurse?
Of course.
Well, actually, you do well, but and I don't think they distinguish nurses from scientists, but scientists have just recently outpaced the medical profession just by like a percentage point. The most trusted profession is the military. And I think it comes from, we need the military to keep us safe. We need that sense of trust in the military, and then the 2009, 11, things like that have changed our attitudes about the military. The press and the media are like 5 to 10%, not so good. But the medical profession is like 39%. Anyway, wanted to dig still a little deeper, being the scientist that I am. Could I find out more about what's going on here? So I found this sliver of the story. For those who may just get the audio portion of this, this is a graph of the percentage of Democrats that trust science over the same period of time. And you can see that among Democrats, the trust is increasing significantly. Let's see, who's a data nerd here and who knows what I'm going to show you next? Yes, if you get the previous graph, which is everybody, and I just showed you a positive increase in Democrats, this is what's going on with trust among Republicans in scientists over the same period of time, linear decrease. So you put those two graphs together, and this is what you get. And when I saw this and had the Excel put the linear regression line in there, I just took this as a symbol. You should stop investigating this line of questioning. So I did. But it told me that I think we have, I don't know what your political persuasion is, it doesn't matter. But it told me that we probably have some work to do with Republicans more than Democrats. And there's a lot of truth to that. All right, well, there's an inverse, if you can say the other side of the coin of trust is polarization. And there are all kinds of measures of, and we all feel it. If you watch any piece of the news every day, you know that we are a more polarized society than we used to be. I think it's related to this deterioration of trust. So just some quick data on this. Having trouble seeing my computer, and I'm going to lose this microphone, so hang on. In 1994, Democrats, 16% of Democrats had a very unfavorable attitude about Republicans. Now it's 38%. It's increased. That doesn't seem so good. If you're a Republican, you're not off the hook, because we went from 17% to 43% that have a very unfavorable view of Democrats. And even worse, 27% of Democrats see the Republican Party as a threat to the nation's security. I mean, really, what is going on in our society to get these kinds of trends? Now, why are these trends so important? Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Hang on, everybody. Maybe I'll have to move this. Why are these, is it still on or did I lose it? Yeah, I can't.
I don't know what they've done to make that work, so.
Is this on? No?
I'm turning it on so it doesn't, I'm turning it off. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's what I said. If you want to use it, I'll move it.
Okay, David, if you could turn that on, if you press and hold the button, I'm going to keep talking. Why are these trends such a problem? One is the kinds of problems that we're facing today, like climate change, for example. How's that? Good? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm worried to touch this thing right now because is that off so I can? Great, okay. All right, let me just clip this. The reason these trends are so, other than it just kind of feels yucky to get up every day, live in a world like this, one of the problems is that the problems that we're facing.
Did it drop?
Oh, I got it. I'm now to telling you someday why. I got it.
Yeah.
Figured it out. Scientist. All right. I had three reasons that this is such a problem. One is the problems are so big and so complex today that we need most everybody to participate in tackling these problems. So, Democrats are never going to solve climate change by themselves. It's going to take Republicans as well. if you look at some of actually the business literature on sort of organizational development, you know that when you have a complex problem to solve, you solve it faster and better if you have cognitive diversity or viewpoint diversity. So once again, we can't be polarized like this and expect to solve the big complicated problems of art. We need viewpoint diversity. And thirdly, I would say, again, for the big problems, we're going to have to integrate a lot of social, economic, and environmental values. And you might as well put it on the table at the beginning and understand what you need to accommodate. If you only put the environmental values on the table, you're going to bump into social and economic at some point. So just go ahead and get them on the table. In order to do that, you need to be able to work with people that aren't like you, really, that are different, that bring different perspectives. So over the years, I have read a lot. Probably started about a decade ago trying to keep up with the social. I'm an ecologist, not a social psychologist, but I tried to keep up. I read a lot of books, read a lot of primary literature. What I wanted to do was share seven take-home messages I've gotten from the last decade or so of reading. So you don't have to read all this stuff. If you want to read it, let me know. I'll send you the reading list. But I just want to go through 7 principles. We're going down into this valley here a little bit deeper now. And the first principle came from a book by Roger Pielke called The Honest Broker. If you're a scientist or young scientist, old, doesn't matter. If you haven't read this book, you should read this book. It explains a lot. One of the things he talked about in his book that was like the light bulb moment for me because of personal experience in Maine in the early 90s, I'll tell you about it in a minute. He distinguished between abortion politics and cancer politics. He used different names, but I think these work better. Think about it, it would be hard to imagine any science that I could put on the table, anybody could put on the table that would change however you might feel about abortion. It's just a subject that's very emotional, and science can't really help with that. Cancer, on the other hand, we'd all like more science to help solve or cure cancer. Everybody wants more science. So the reason I found this so valuable is because in 1992 I was traipsing around the Maine woods around Moosehead Lake and points around Baxter Park, trying to understand how what we used to call industrial forestry affect bird populations at the time. And I was a young scientist, all of probably 32 or something like that. And one of the things we discovered pretty quickly was that clear cuts were full of birds of conservation concern. And everything, frankly, even we all kind of thought that clear cuts were biological deserts. That's what everybody, so in fact, I wasn't even going to sample clear cuts. Why would anybody do that? Well, we did anyway, and we were really glad we did, because clear cuts and the scrubby vegetation that comes up after a clear cut is full of species of conservation concern. Now, there's another set of species, I know, another set of species that can't live in a clear cut, but if you got the right mix in the landscape, you're accommodating everything. And when I reported the results from our studies, it's like, wow, talk about hitting the buzz saw. It was, well, let's see. It was a difficult couple of years for me as a young scientist. I thought, what's the problem here? This is kind of good news. Birds use clear cuts. We didn't know. That's good. But what I didn't appreciate at that time was that I was really kind of working in an area of what might be called abortion politics. Who was here in Maine in the mid-1990s? Raise your hand. Anybody? All right, there was this clear-cutting issue that we were talking a lot about at the time, and it was a very emotional period. And I just didn't appreciate that I was working on such an emotional issue. I had worked so hard to build a relationship of trust with the timberland owners so that I could do this science, and I frankly forgot to build a relationship with the environmental community. It's like, why would I do that? I am the environmental community. Well, okay, not really. So I learned a lesson early on. It's a good thing to remember. If you're working on a subject that's highly emotional, you need to think differently about how you move your science into that arena of discussion. Okay, second thought, which you're probably all quite familiar with now. A lot of this social psychology has really hit the press in the last few years. And so we all have this tendency to read only the information that supports our existing point of view. The deeper we care about an issue, clear cutting, for example, the more emotionally we're bought into it, the less able we are to take in new information. There's an inverse relationship between our emotional connection to the subject and our ability to seek out diverse viewpoints. Confirmation bias can kind of be thought of as a defense mechanism that's triggered by a direct attack upon your belief system. And I like this, Jonathan Haidt is another book that I mentioned earlier, The Righteous Brain, summed it up really well. He said, "We are all indeed selfish hypocrites, so skilled at putting on a show of virtue that we fool even ourselves." So confirmation bias, we all know that we do that. We are attracted to information that supports how we already think. All right, we're going to go back a little further in time to the Scottish philosopher David Hume, lived in the 18th century, and he said, I'm shortening it here, he was a lot wordier than this, but he said that reason is the slave to the passions. And he said that thinking and reasoning are actually infiltrated with our emotions. So if you ask people to believe something that violates their intuitions or their emotions, they will devote their efforts to finding an escape hatch or reason to doubt your arguments or conclusions, and they will always succeed. Okay, so remember that the more emotional we are about a subject, the harder it is for us to access new and different information. It's just good to be aware of. Okay, number 4, the backfire effect. Has anybody heard of the backfire effect? Am I talking? Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, this is difficult to take. We're going deeper. When you provide people with the facts, with the science, no matter how true those facts may be, if the facts challenge their existing viewpoint, they will become even more entrenched against you. This hurts for a scientist. We're supposed to share knowledge with people, but there are circumstances, and it's only in the particular circumstances, where when we share what we know, we can act, if we threaten the values or the emotions of who we're talking to, it can make them further entrenched against us. There was a great paper in 2004 by Daniel Sarowitz that was something like how science makes environmental issues worse. Does anybody ever? If you want that one, let me know. I'll send it to you, because that's what got me started on this. There are situations where science can actually make things worse. Okay, if we could only educate them, everything would be okay. Well, a lot of work has been done on this too in recent years. It turns out the more educated people are, the better able they are to come up with an argument against you. The smarter you are, the better you are. A study by Dan Kahan at Yale showed that, I'm sorry, I'm picking on Republicans here, the Republicans with a greater scientific literacy are actually less likely to believe that climate change is a problem. Inverse relationship. Okay, so it's not as simple as just educating people. There's something else going on here. Okay, number 6, groups bind and blind. This is the title of a chapter in Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind. And what he says here is groups it's easy to be a part of a group these days, especially with social media. Groups bind us into ideological teams that fight each other as though the fate of the world depends on our side winning. And groups blind us to the fact that each team, each viewpoint is really composed of good people who have something important to say. There was a study by Cass Sunstein, I think he's at Harvard, who looked at how people's opinions just asked individually versus their opinion after having 15 minutes of being able to talk with 9 other people of like mind. And what he found that after just 15 minutes, the individual's viewpoint became more extreme, just as a result of hanging out for 15 minutes with people of like minds. And if you think about it today, that, you know, with social media, it is so easy to hang out with people of like minds. And I think that's part of what's making us, what's polarizing our society. We spend too much time with people like ourselves. Okay, number 7, this is as deep as we're going to go. Then the sun is going to come out, and the promised land will appear. We evolved, this was the most troubling thing I found of all, we evolved to win and not to be right. And if you think about it, really it's the power of persuasion that influences people. Think about presidential debates. Back to Jennifer Hahn, facts really don't seem to matter. It's just whoever's most persuasive. If you think about, I don't know if there are any lawyers here, I'm envious of lawyers' skills, but what lawyers do is try to convince you or try to convince a jury of something. And it's okay to cherry pick the information in order to try to convince you. So people with amazing oratory skills can really have a huge effect on how people think. Okay, so that's as deep as we're going to go. We need to come back out of this muck here. We need a plan. I mean, we're scientists. We have a role to play, an important role to play. And despite what Jennifer Hahn told us at Manomet many years ago, we actually know that facts do matter. Barack Obama, in his farewell address, said, "My mother told me that facts have a way of catching up to you. So the climate's going to warm no matter what we might think." So science really does matter, and it's our challenge to figure out how to get it used. And so I go back to my original point, which is lead with the relationship and follow with the science. This is the one thing I've learned after 30 years of trying to do science, is when I build a relationship with the people, the timber industry, whoever, with the people I want to use the science, it is so much more likely to be used. And as scientists, we tend to lead with we know so much stuff, we just want to share what we know. Just sit on it for a while. Get the relationship built first, then you will be believed. So I just listed some of the kinds of groups, entities, companies that we work with at Manomet: fishermen, institutional investors, dairy farmers, international shipping ports, timber companies, my friends there, retailers, small business owners, crayfish farmers in Louisiana, ranchers in Argentina. What's common about all of these? Well, they're all for-profit entities. We're a nonprofit, they're all for-profits. We forge relationships with, not just, but with a lot of for-profit entities. We need them to create a sustainable world. For-profits control like about 75% of the resources that we have. We can't create a sustainable world without the for-profit sector. So, practically speaking, this is the hardest part for me to explain. I don't know how to tell people how to create a relationship based on trust. It's just something, you can't get books on this. Anyway, I would suggest that if you want your science used to make the most difference, find build a relationship with somebody who does see the world very differently from you. It's amazing what you can get done. And just to make it a little more specific, I would say the easiest way to do this is to come up with a specific project with a very specific objective that requires both of you to get it done. And I guess my latest example is I've sort of gotten into marine science, and the little bit of science that they let me do at Manomet anymore is in the marine science world, and we got really interested in how to restore clam flats from this invasive green crab that's growing because of the warming Gulf of Maine. And there's no way I could have any significant effect on this issue without hanging out with the clam diggers a lot and understanding what they know about this system that I don't know and will never know. On the other hand, I know something about sample sizes and what it takes to really learn something out on those flats. So this is a great example where, we don't exactly see the world the same way, but we couldn't do this without each other. And then the third thing, practical thing I would say is, and this is maybe the most important, is listen. I feel like our problems, the big problems today, are more relational than they are technical. And listening is a skill that you need in order to build a relationship based on trust. There's a reason our mouths close and our ears don't. It's so that we can listen. The best way to disarm someone is to listen to them. And listening to someone doesn't mean agreeing with them. The purpose of listening is to understand, not to endorse. Respect is the cornerstone of any meaningful exchange of ideas. Being respectful is even more important than finding common ground. How are we ever going to solve the big complex problems if we don't talk to the people who are right in front of us? And if you only ever speak to people of like mind, the people who agree with you, you shut out the possibility that there are new perspectives and new discoveries and new information that is actually needed to solve the problem. Okay, and in case you, this is a really great book. If you want to hone your skills at listening to someone who sees the world differently from you, and you know you've been in this situation. I mean, whoever, you go to Thanksgiving dinner with family and there's always somebody there that's of the opposite political party. You can feel your blood pressure rising. This book tells you how to deal with that. So I recommend this. So let me just end. I'm going to end now and I'm trying to come back up out of the valley. Everywhere I go, I see people who want to make the world a better place, and they're ready to do so if you will meet them where they are, if you will respect their values, if you will understand their constraints. There's way more opportunity to work with people who are different from you than anybody appreciates. And I know we wake up, we see this talk about gloom and doom every day in the news. It seems insane, but it's not what I see. It's not what I see when I'm out working in the real world. People of all cultural and political persuasions are ready to make the world a better place. They want to make it feels good to make the world a better place. So if you are hoping to change how others see the world, this is my last piece of advice. If you want to help others see the world differently, you have to be ready to see the world differently yourself. And that may be the hardest part. Churchill once said, "Those who never change anything." So I would say that's one of my biggest experiences when working with people who are not like me, is that, I see the world completely differently than I did. I don't have to compromise my values. but I see the world differently, and I think I'm able to get things done that I would have never been able to do otherwise. So with that, I'm going to stop. I hope you have some questions. Feel free to challenge anything I said. I don't mind. And David, I'll turn it back over to you.
So there's time for questions, and we have folks with microphones. You want to wait for them to come by, so raise your hand real high, Andrew or David. Just make your way over and hand them a mic. So Andrew's coming over to give you a mic in just a sec.
Hi, I'd like to just speak for a constituency, not mention the unenrolled voter or the independents. And I see presentations like this sometimes, and there is, we're kind of left out, and so we're part of the data. We're part of the electorate, and so it's just a reminder. And then if I can do an add-on to the listen at the end, really it's about how you end conversations, and if we can agree to disagree respectfully, that's how you continue the discussion, and try to walk away and not be upset.
Thank you. I could have put the independence graph in there. Next time I will, because there is one.
Peter, Andrew's coming over to you.
Thank you, and I concur completely. And I was wondering if you'd heard about a group in the House in Congress called the Climate Solutions Caucus, now 72 members, and nobody can get in without bringing somebody from the other party. And I was wondering if you'd heard about them, and well, you obviously have, where you're nodding, and if you could tell us a little bit more about what you know about what they're coming up with and how they're really talking to each other.
Yes, I have heard of them, and I have no idea what they're coming up with. That's easy, easy to answer. Frankly, they seem to be a pretty quiet group, and I haven't seen much out of them. Every now and then I'll see they've added a new member. And when they add, if I've got this right, when they add a Democrat, they have to add a Republican, and I'm sorry, I don't know what they do about independents. There aren't many of those. Angus King would be one. So I don't know, I think there's like 46 or 47 members of this caucus now. And I think it's very encouraging that we've got a conversation going.
72 members.
Okay, 72. Advanced since I last heard about them. But that's a great example of something that's encouraging.
I kind of like your reaction to a thought I have, and that is when you're talking about some of these things, to think about how you responded to things when you were, say, 15. And in going to that, when I talk to people of that age, I'm tempted to say, don't believe me, regardless of what I have for credentials. All I ask is that you consider what I have to say and then find out, after looking at other sources and other opinions, whether what I told you is true or not.
Well, that's a great point. And I think my strategy has been when I work with, well, I don't work with 15-year-olds very much. I tend to work with adults that are often very different from me. And I think that what I've tended to do is not say a lot early on until I've got a certain level of comfort. I could certainly say, this is what I observe. Here's some information. Take it as you wish. Let me know if you got any questions. It's a matter of how you comport yourself when you're engaging someone in a conversation. And there are ways to do it, and there are ways to ways to not do it if you want to advance trust with whomever you're talking with. So that's a very good strategy. I think I've used that.
Other questions?
I want to compliment two people who work at Manomet that I heard speak today, Laura Winslow and Ethel Wilkerson in the teaching section. We're talking about the work they're doing with students and having those students talk with small business owners and ask them about their sustainability, and that there was give and take where the students learned from the small business owners and the small business owners learned from the students things that they might think about now that they hadn't thought about before about sustainability. And as Peter Garrett mentioned with this Climate Solutions Caucus, again, that's a place where people who wouldn't necessarily come together came together and discussed issues that will make us move forward, just as you're discussing in your talk about that we're somewhat polarized. We talk to people who are just like ourselves. So I'm proposing, as a former educator myself, that we use this opportunity while we're here having lunch to talk around the tables with each other about how we might go back in our own communities and find other people who we have never talked to, that may be people we can talk about what we do, why we think it's important, and ask them how we might activate their community. Let's say it's the local Rotary in town, or the veterans, where the veterans get together and drink in town, or where going to Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or community groups and asking them what they think is important. Because I think moving sustainability forward is starting to have conversations with people who we don't usually talk to about what's important to us and what's important to them.
How are we doing on time? Okay.
Maybe one last question? Andrew? Yeah, Andrew's coming over. Hang on just a sec.
I'm wondering if we, this morning's group, we talked about local and traditional place-based knowledge, using that, using indigenous people's knowledge and things like that. And that's the type of thing I'm wondering if there's kind of two levels of that, of there's a level of discussing it in the books and discussing it, paying lip service to things like that and discussing them. But it seems like in our society, when the rubber hits the road, when we get down to the nitty-gritty, we have to do some actual work, some actual planning, some actual decisions by government and things. We kind of put that aside. And we go back to the scientists, we go back to the people in power and things like that. Do you notice that change of level happens when we put aside the lip service and really get down to it?
Do I notice the trend? You mean in maybe? Try again.
What I'm saying is, we discuss this in books and things like that, and discuss it academically. But when we're actually planning something governmentally or something important, then all of a sudden we're afraid of that local knowledge. We're afraid to let fishermen talk. We're afraid to let the indigenous people decide things for us. Then we turn back to scientists and to academia and things like that. Is there that switching back and forth?
Okay, I think not quite sure how to answer that. I'll say a couple things and see if I can do it. One of the things that frustrated me about all of this reading that I did, all of these books by academics, is there was no last chapter that said what to do about it. It was just like problem, thank you, goodbye. And so that's where I felt that there needs to be this last chapter written, which I think is essentially the story I just told. Learn how to have a conversation with someone who thinks differently from you. It's not complicated to say. It's a little bit hard to do, especially if you're emotional about the issue. I think I can only answer your question from the perspective of a scientist and not from the perspective of government. And one of the things, let's see, I don't want to say this. I think we scientists are better at hubris than we are at humility. Sometimes we don't draw the line. We're not very clear about where the limits of our knowledge are because we've studied so much and we know so much. We hate to admit it when we don't know something. But when in the situations I've been in, I just say, I just don't know the answer to that question. I'm a scientist, you know, it's not something I've studied or not something we know. And I think there's one of the best ways, if you believe me about this trust, and that trust is sort of at the secret of solving our problems, one of the ways to build trust is to admit the limits of your knowledge. Be honest with people. And so I think that's a key. Scientists need to draw those boundaries. And I think that will help a lot. And it would help all of us a lot.
So we could keep talking, or questions and answers and discussion for quite a while, but lunch is almost here. So my job is to do a few things before lunch. The first is to thank John for a wonderful talk and a great Q&A.